The day began as so many others in Cedarvale. The sun, still low in the eastern sky, began painting the horizon with soft streaks of pink, while a gentle breeze stirred through the rows of quiet houses. I, Jake Carter, had just swung open my front door to pick up the morning paper from the porch. The faint scent of coffee still clung to the air behind me. Everything seemed normal, almost too normal, and I stepped outside in a half-dream, barefoot against the cool wooden slats. The birds were in fine voice, the grass glistened with dew, and I figured the day would roll along uneventfully. Then, in that quiet hush before the town fully awoke, I saw her. She came from the end of the street, moving with an unearthly grace that made me pause. At first, I thought it was a trick of the early light, perhaps my eyes adjusting to the sun's glare. But then I noticed the slight glow around her silhouette, the remarkable shimmering of silver-white hair that fell against a complexion tinted faintly blue. That shade, glacial, luminous, wasn't human. I blinked, unsure if I'd awakened properly. Yet there she was, walking with measured, deliberate steps, a satchel slung over her shoulder, wearing what looked like a standard-issue postal uniform. Only, the insignia shimmered oddly. With an almost regal bearing, she stopped at each house, sliding letters into mailboxes. No one else seemed to be out that early, which made me the lone witness to this dreamlike apparition. She approached, and my heart thudded in my chest. Her gaze, otherworldly, met mine. I had the distinct feeling something monumental was unfolding, though I couldn't have guessed how it would shape my life. "Hello," she said softly, her voice carrying a melodic timbre. "I'm Liora, your new mail carrier." Her accent was lilting, subtly off from the standard American English I heard in Cedarvale. I blinked again, certain I might still be asleep, but she extended my mail toward me, and, somewhat awkwardly, I reached out. Our fingers brushed. Immediately, a current of energy, bright and startling as an electric jolt, ran from her skin to mine. I gasped, instinctively pulling my hand back, letting the envelopes flutter to the ground. "Apologies," she said, crouching smoothly to pick them up. "I didn't mean to startle you." I struggled to find my voice. "No, it's okay," I mumbled. "I just didn't expect to meet our new mail carrier like this." Her smile was gentle, almost curious. "Nor did I," she murmured. Then she handed me my mail again, careful not to touch my skin this time. "I hope you have a pleasant morning." She walked away without a backward glance, while I stood there, heart pounding, mind reeling. By the time I caught my breath, she'd vanished down the road, leaving me with a swirl of questions and an odd tingling in my hand where she'd touched me. It might have been the mild shock of the moment, or perhaps something deeper. Regardless, that fleeting introduction set the stage for events I couldn't possibly have imagined. As the hours wore on, the small-town rumor mill whirred into action with unbridled enthusiasm. Cedarvale was a close-knit community, proud of its traditions and suspicious of anything unusual. A new resident was cause for chatter. An obviously alien new resident was enough to send the entire place into a flurry. Whispers about Liora's unusual coloring, her quiet demeanor, and her mesmerizing gaze spread like wildfire. Some folks voiced admiration, drawn to her exotic looks. Others expressed discomfort, sprinkling their words with unkind undertones. The sensational new arrival was the sole topic at the local diner, the hardware store, and even the library. Meanwhile, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Something about her presence, and that electric moment our fingers touched, lodged itself in my mind. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just curiosity. Yet the thought of seeing her again kept fluttering inside me, a gentle, unrelenting pull. By the time morning rolled around the next day, I was waiting eagerly by my mailbox. She arrived at precisely 7:45 a.m., as if her route were mapped to the second. This time, she paused slightly, regarding me with a polite half-smile. "Good morning, Jake Carter," she said, pronouncing my name with a curious accent, as though shaping each syllable carefully. "Your mail." Her tone was formal, but her eyes glinted with a subdued warmth that made me catch my breath. I took the stack of envelopes, remembering at the last moment not to let my fingers stray against hers. A spark seemed to flutter between us regardless, though it was intangible. "Thank you," I said simply. Then, with a hint of daring, I added, "How are you settling in, Liora?" She blinked, and I noticed a subtle luminous shift in the undertones of her skin. Cedarvale is tranquil, she replied. I find it quite different from where I originate. Naturally, I had 1,000 questions swirling in my brain, but I sensed that pressing her too hard, too fast, might push her away. So I nodded politely, trying to look as friendly as possible. If you ever need anything, let me know. She inclined her head and then resumed her route, her lithe frame disappearing around the bend. I remained by the mailbox long after she was gone, pondering the layers of meaning in that brief exchange. Her eyes had gleamed with some unspoken emotion, yet her words were measured, almost mechanical. Something about her posture suggested tension, as if she were torn between civility and caution. The next few weeks passed in a kind of surreal blur. Each day, I lingered by my mailbox to catch Liora, even for a short conversation. Sometimes, she asked me strange questions, her head tilted with genuine curiosity. She wanted to know about Cedarvale's customs, why we said hello in passing but rarely stopped to talk to neighbors at length, or why we minded our own business in the grocery aisles rather than greeting everyone around us. She seemed fascinated by human interactions, especially small talk and politeness. I quickly learned that, on her world, wherever that might be, conversation was more direct, sometimes uncomfortably so. I remember one moment in particular, a mild Wednesday morning. She was handing me a couple of bills and an advertisement, her gaze lingering on my face. Suddenly, she asked, "How do you humans deal with unreciprocated love?" Jake Carter. Caught off guard, I stammered. We just deal with it, I suppose. We hurt, we grieve, we move on." She studied me with a mysterious solemnity. "So you can control how strongly you feel, after some time?" I shrugged, unsettled by her frankness. "Not exactly. Emotions don't vanish easily, but they can fade, or we can find ways to cope." She nodded, her expression thoughtful, and then, without another word, continued on her route. I watched her retreating form, a queasy swirl of intrigue and unease playing through me. Was she speaking about someone she cared for? An alien love unrequited? Or was she merely collecting data on human emotions? Gradually, my curiosity eclipsed any discomfort. I asked around, gleaning bits of hearsay, half-truths, and contradictory stories about Liora. Some said she'd arrived on a covert government flight, escorted by officials under cover of night. Others whispered that she might be part of some interstellar exchange program. A few scorned her as a blue-skinned devil, untrustworthy and dangerous, though they had no solid basis for such claims. Personally, I saw nothing sinister about her. She seemed lonely, even fragile at times, despite her elegant posture. Yet, day by day, something about her changed. Her eyes, once a calm, reflective silver, began to gleam more vividly. The hue of her skin took on a brighter glow, especially around her face and shoulders. When I asked if she felt all right, she smiled and brushed off my concern, insisting she was simply adjusting to Earth's environment. But that explanation felt incomplete. I sensed an undercurrent of restlessness in her. At times, her voice trembled as though she were restraining something within. Other days, she seemed almost euphoric, face flushed with luminous warmth. Late at night, as I tossed in bed, I found myself thinking of her. Those eyes, that melodic voice, the intangible spark that had flared when we first brushed hands. A part of me longed for answers, while another part of me questioned whether I was drifting too close to something beyond my comprehension. One afternoon, I was at the local diner, sipping coffee at the counter, when my friend Tony slid onto the stool beside me. Tony was a straightforward man in his 50s, with a bushy mustache and a fondness for conspiracies. He had keen ears for gossip and an uncanny ability to dig up secrets. He lowered his voice conspiratorially. "Jake, I've been hearing things about that new mail carrier of ours." I set my mug down. "What kind of things?" Tony glanced around. "Remember how folks said the government might be behind her arrival? Well, rumor has it that she's not just some random alien among us. Some folks think she's part of a bigger plan. Maybe she's posed to monitor the town, or even experiment on unsuspecting humans." I frowned. "That sounds like paranoid nonsense." He shrugged, tapping a finger against his coffee cup. "Could be. But keep your eyes open, okay? They say weird stuff's been happening whenever she's around. Tempers flare, or folks get giddy for no reason, like their emotions are being manipulated." A chill crept along my spine. I thought of how, on certain mornings, I woke with an unexplained surge of energy, or how others around Cedarvale had spoken of unusual mood shifts. And I recalled the times I'd seen Liora trembling, a bright gleam in her eyes, as though she battled a wave of raw feeling. Could that be tied to some innate quality of her species? I shook my head, trying to dispel the notion. Tony, you know how this town is. Everyone wants a good story. Let's not jump to conclusions. He gave me a measured stare, then took a long sip of coffee. Well, just be careful, friend. The next morning was a Saturday, and I watched from my window, noticing Liora's figure in the distance. My heart gave a lurch. She was walking slower than usual, her posture hunched, as though weighed down by some invisible burden. Worried, I dashed outside. She stopped at my mailbox, one hand pressed against her temple. A faint blue shimmer radiated from her skin in irregular pulses. Her breath came in shallow gasps. Liora, I asked softly, resisting the urge to reach out and steady her. What's going on? Are you hurt? She lifted her gaze, eyes bright with an intensity I'd never seen. The color glowed near her temples, swirling like living light. Jake, she whispered, voice trembling. I can't control it, this surge inside me. My chest tightened with concern. Let me help. What do you need? She inhaled shakily. Distance. You must stay away from me. My species, we go through something akin to a mating cycle, though the term is inadequate in human language. It heightens every emotion, every thought. It radiates outward, affecting those nearby. I recalled Tony's rumors, my own observations. Suddenly it all clicked. You're causing the mood swings around town. The tension, the excitability. She lowered her head. Yes, and it will only intensify over the next few days if I don't find a way to channel it properly. It's not safe for anyone around me, especially you. My concern warred with a strange protectiveness surging inside me. Let me do something, Liora, I pleaded. There must be a way to help you. Maybe we can find some medical assistance. Or, she shook her head vehemently. No authorities, she said, voice fierce. They would only exploit the situation or isolate me entirely. I have to handle this on my own. Before I could argue, she broke away and hurried down the street, her steps unsteady. I watched her retreat, my heart pounding. Fear, sadness, and a curious yearning all rose in me. I couldn't let her suffer alone. Something about this intangible bond we shared compelled me to act. That evening, Cedarvale hosted its annual town festival, a grand affair with music, food stalls, and dancing in the streets. Families came from surrounding counties. Laughter filled the air, and children ran wild with glow sticks and cotton candy. But beneath the cheerful surface, I detected an undercurrent of heightened emotion. People seemed more excitable. Small irritations escalated into arguments in the blink of an eye. Joyful laughter burst out at odd moments, too loud, too intense. An electric crackle of tension rippled through the crowd, though few seemed consciously aware of it. I wandered through the festival, searching for Liora. I wondered if she would come. Part of me hoped she was resting somewhere, away from the throng, but the other part suspected her presence would inevitably draw her here. She'd told me she couldn't control the impulses coursing through her. If so, she might be drawn to a place where so many strong feelings converged. By the time night fell, the lights strung across Cedarvale Square gleamed against the dark sky. Music blared from loudspeakers, people danced in tight knots, and the swirl of motion was dizzying. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shimmer of silver hair. Liora stood near a small stage, her posture rigid, her gaze darting around in agitation. Strands of her hair glowed faintly in the flickering festival lights, and her skin shone brighter than I'd ever seen it. Cautiously, I navigated through the crowd until I reached her. Liora, I called over the music. She turned, eyes wild. I saw fear etched across her features. Perhaps she sensed her capacity to affect the crowd's emotions, or maybe she was already losing control. Jake, she whispered, I shouldn't be here. It's too intense, all these feelings. I can feel them soaking into me. Anger, lust, delight, jealousy, everything is swirling. I gently took her arm, ignoring the electric spark that traveled through my skin. Come with me, I said, hoping to guide her somewhere quieter. But it was too late. A loud argument broke out in the crowd behind us. Two men started pushing each other, their voices raised in fury. Nearby, A group of teenagers dissolved into hysterical giggles, as though overcome by a wave of euphoric mania. The emotional extremes were spiraling all around us, no doubt fueled by Liora's heightened state. She staggered backward, pressing her hands to her temples. "I can't hold it in anymore," she groaned. The glow around her intensified. The pressure in the air seemed to magnify. People close by felt it, too. Some clutched their heads in confusion. Others glared at strangers with unfounded aggression. Chaos erupted. Festival-goers yelled, fought, or collapsed in tears, entirely at the mercy of roiling sensations they didn't understand. I gripped Liora's shoulders, trying to anchor her. "Breathe," I urged, attempting to project calm. But I could sense the wave rippling out of her, unstoppable. The music sputtered to a halt as the crowd's turmoil mounted. Suddenly, flashing lights pierced the night, red and blue glares that danced off the festival banners. The local police, and possibly more, had arrived. They rushed in, trying to quell the disturbance, though they appeared baffled by the sudden surge of madness. I found myself seized by two uniformed officers. One yanked Liora away from me. She cried out, a despairing sound that sliced through the din. Then everything went dark. I awoke in a cramped hospital room, my head pounding from the aftermath of the emotional storm. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed faintly. Disoriented, I struggled upright. A stern-faced nurse appeared, checking vitals with professional detachment. She informed me I'd collapsed at the festival, likely due to heat exhaustion or stress. The entire event had turned into a fiasco, with numerous injuries reported. However, she had no information about the radiant, blue-skinned woman who'd been at the center of it all. Fear coiled inside me. I had to find Liora. I had to make sure she was safe. As soon as I was discharged, I raced home. Tony was waiting on my porch, anxiety etched across his features. "You're alive," he muttered in relief. "Heard what happened at the festival. The authorities took that alien girl. Some secretive folks in suits rushed in, loaded her into a black van. They didn't ask many questions, just cordoned off the area and left." A wave of fury mingled with concern in my chest. "Where did they take her?" He shrugged helplessly. "Nobody knows for sure. There's talk of a hidden government facility outside town, near the old Army research site. Word is, she was carted off under sedation." My hands trembled. The memory of her terrified eyes consumed me. "I have to get her out of there." Tony's eyes widened. "Are you insane? Going up against government agents, or whoever they are. That's a good way to vanish without a trace." I gritted my teeth. "She needs my help, Tony. She's not just some test subject. She's special." He exhaled sharply. Then, in a low voice, he said, "You're a crazy fool, Jake Carter. But I'm with you. Let's do this right. I'll dig around, see if we can find a lead on where she's being held." Though relief coursed through me, fear and dread gnawed at my gut. I didn't know how we'd manage it, but I knew we had to try. The days that followed were a blur of clandestine inquiries, favors called in, and careful planning. Tony had a friend, Marjorie, who worked in data processing at the municipal offices. Through her, we acquired hush-hush references to a sealed facility just outside Cedarvale's boundaries, shielded by tall fences and patrolled by armed guards. Officially, it was a research station, but rumor pegged it as something else entirely, a site where extraterrestrial matters were handled. Every so often, black SUVs slipped through the gates, transporting unknown cargo or personnel. We bided our time, collecting scraps of information, until one moonless night, we made our move. Tony and I drove out in his battered pickup, parking it a mile away from the perimeter fence. The darkness enveloped us as we navigated through the trees on foot, hearts pounding with each step. Finally, we reached a chain-link barrier topped with barbed wire. Floodlights swept across the grounds in wide arcs. "Stay low," Tony breathed, reaching for a pair of wire cutters. We clipped our way through a remote section of fence, then slid carefully inside. My pulse drummed in my ears. Thoughts of Liora's plight propelled me forward, banishing hesitation. Beyond a pair of large warehouse-like buildings, we spotted a cluster of smaller structures. We guessed that was where they kept detainees, or possibly laboratories. With no time to waste, we crept toward them. Reaching a side door, we found it locked electronically. Tony fiddled with a small device I barely knew he possessed, some gadget meant for overriding simple digital locks. Within seconds, the door clicked. We slipped inside. The interior was stark, fluorescent lit, with long hallways branching off like a labyrinth. Our footfalls echoed, sending adrenaline surges through my veins. At any moment, we could be discovered. Yet we pressed on, checking each door, scanning the sparse signage. My gut churned, wondering what we might find behind each sealed entry. Finally, in a corridor near the rear of the building, we encountered a steel door labeled Containment. The window was frosted, allowing no view inside. Tony tapped away at the lock with trembling fingers until, mercifully, it clicked. I pushed the door open. Inside, the room was dimly lit by a faint blue glow. My eyes needed a moment to adjust. Gradually, I realized rows of upright pods lined the walls. Each pod held a figure, bathed in an eerie luminescence. I moved closer, heart thundering, to see the occupant of the nearest chamber. It was an alien, unmistakably of Liora's species, with silver-white hair floating around its face in some sort of stasis. The being's skin glowed faintly, a gentle hum emanating from the pod. A label affixed to the glass read, Subject Number 5. I swallowed hard, scanning each pod in turn. Some were empty, but many contained more of Liora's people, each in a seemingly suspended state. My mind reeled. This was beyond a simple case of capturing one extraterrestrial. This was a systematic program, a hidden experiment. My stomach turned as I imagined how long they'd been here, locked away from the world. Where was Liora? I searched frantically until I spotted a pod near the far end. Her silhouette, though blurred by the glass, was unmistakable. My entire being surged with relief. She was alive, at least. I sprinted over, pressing my palm against the cool surface. Her eyes were closed, her face slack, as though in a deep, forced sleep. A label read, Subject Number 14, New Arrival. Tony, trembling, hovered behind me. We have to get her out of there. All of them, he whispered. Yes, I replied, heart hammering. But how? He pointed to a control panel near the side of the room, blinking with alien and human interfaces merged in a bizarre fusion of technology. We approached it cautiously. Several lines of data scrolled across the screen, referencing stasis induction, biocontainment protocol, and phase testing. My skin prickled with horror, imagining what phase testing might entail. Tony fiddled with the console, scanning the display for anything that looked like a release mechanism. I kept glancing at the door, dreading the arrival of guards. At last, a small prompt read, Disengage safety locks? Tony pressed it without hesitation. Lights flickered overhead. An alarm chirped once, then abruptly fell silent. For a moment, the pods hissed, their surfaces glowing brighter. Then, with a sigh of decompressing air, each slid open. I rushed to Liora's side as she toppled forward, limp. I caught her, carefully lowering her to the floor. Her eyelids fluttered, breath ragged. The glow of her skin had diminished, leaving a pale, almost grayish tint. Fear clutched me. Had they harmed her? Was she in shock? She stirred, eyes flickering open. Upon seeing me, a faint spark of recognition flickered in her gaze. Jake, she rasped, voice barely above a whisper. You're here. Tears pressed at my eyes. I'm here, I said. We have to get out. All around us, the other pods opened, revealing more aliens in various states of consciousness. A few roused quickly, staggering to their feet with dazed expressions. Others slumped, needing support from their newly freed companions. Panic and confusion mingled in the air. Tony and I exchanged a grim look. We couldn't leave them behind. Summoning all the nerve we could muster, we encouraged the group to follow us. It was a surreal moment. Dozens of aliens, all sporting that signature silver hair and faintly luminescent skin, clinging to one another as they emerged from stasis. We guided them into the corridor. No alarms blared, but time felt unbearably short. Any second, guards could flood the hallway. My thoughts spun. How would we transport them out? We had only Tony's pickup. We never expected to free so many. Yet leaving them behind was unthinkable. Drawing on adrenaline, I whispered instructions for them to keep silent, to stay close. We navigated the twisting halls, heading back toward the exit. At one junction, we froze. 2 guards patrolled ahead, their footsteps echoing. Tony motioned for everyone to duck into the shadows. My heart thundered as the guards passed by, unaware. When their footsteps receded, we hurried forward again. Miraculously, We made it outside without triggering an alarm. The fence loomed in the distance, but we had dozens of exhausted, weakened aliens with us. Some could barely walk. We helped them along, urging them to be silent, though the tension in the air was palpable. The group's combined fear seemed to swirl, but I noticed something else. The emotional wave that had once emanated so powerfully from Liora was absent. Perhaps the stasis had temporarily nullified her cyclical surges. We slipped through the hole in the fence, one by one. The starlit night enveloped us, and for a heartbeat, relief soared. Then reality struck. What next? Where could we hide a group of interstellar refugees? Tony and I exchanged a look of desperate uncertainty. By dawn, we had led the group to an abandoned barn on the outskirts of Cedarvale. The place smelled of dust and old hay, but it offered shelter from prying eyes. Several aliens collapsed onto the straw-strewn floor, still groggy from stasis. Tony and I made frantic plans. We needed supplies: food, water, clothing, perhaps medical help. But how to obtain them without drawing attention? Meanwhile, Liora sat apart from the others, her legs folded beneath her, her face turned upward to the thin shafts of sunlight. I knelt beside her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "How are you holding up?" She turned to me, her eyes still glassy from sedation. "I'm recovering," she murmured. "The stasis nearly suppressed my body's natural cycles, but it's coming back. I can feel the surge again, faintly." My heart lurched. "The mating season?" She nodded, lips trembling. "Yes, it's not just physical. It ties to the core of our psyche, amplifying every sensation. We share these surges in communal settings on my world. We release them in carefully designed rituals. But here, on Earth, there's no infrastructure for that. No knowledge of how to contain or guide the energies." Suddenly, her eyes brimmed with tears, something I hadn't realized her species could do. "Jake, everything's spinning out of control. My entire species, or at least those here, are being used like specimens. And I'm endangering you, endangering this whole town." Tentatively, I clasped her hands, half expecting that electric jolt. But this time, it was a gentle warmth. "We'll figure it out," I said, trying to sound confident. "We'll find a way to protect you and your people. Whatever it takes." She gazed at me with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. "Why do you care so deeply? We only met weeks ago." A soft laugh escaped my throat, part incredulity, part raw feeling. "I'm not sure I can put it into words," I answered. "I feel drawn to you. Like there's a connection that goes beyond reason." A faint shimmer of color passed across her skin. "Perhaps it is the bond," she whispered. "On my world, mates form a link of resonance beyond the physical. I never imagined it could happen with a human." Her gaze lowered. "I don't want you to suffer because of it." My heart pounded. "I'm not suffering. I'm just worried for you, for us." She smiled through her tears, a fragile expression that kindled a fierce desire in me to shield her from harm. Then she closed her eyes, leaning her head against my shoulder. In that moment, all the chaos, all the uncertainty, melted into a singular sense of purpose. I had to protect Liora, no matter the cost. Over the next few days, we mounted a clandestine support network for the freed aliens. Tony secured basic provisions, while I coordinated with Marjorie, who discreetly diverted surplus medical supplies from the local clinic. We moved the aliens under cover of darkness, splitting them into smaller groups, finding hidden spaces in sympathetic residence barns or outbuildings. Cedarvale had always been a quiet town, but it harbored a few open-minded souls who, upon hearing the truth, chose compassion over fear. Still, the tension weighed heavily. Government agents, or whichever secret faction had been holding Liora's people, were undoubtedly searching for them. In hushed corners of the diner, folks whispered about black vans prowling the outskirts. I lived on edge, expecting a knock on my door at any moment. Meanwhile, Liora struggled with the resurgence of her mating cycle. She tried to keep her distance from large groups, fearing a repeat of the festival's emotional meltdown. But the strain wore on her. Late one night, she confided in me that her species required a release or grounding of these energies, typically achieved through a deep sharing with a mate. The concept made my cheeks burn, but I understood it went beyond mere physical intimacy. It was a profound merging of minds and hearts. Without it, the buildup could spiral out of control, unleashing psychic storms across the surrounding population. Our bond had grown over the tumultuous days since her capture. We gravitated to each other, drawn by an undeniable magnetism. Yet, Liora hesitated, fearful of imposing her alien biology on me. I, for my part, wrestled with the magnitude of what it meant to unify so deeply with someone not of this world. But each time I looked into her eyes, I knew there was no turning back. Love, it seemed, transcended species, logic, and all the boundaries we humans took for granted. I recall the night it happened as vividly as if it were etched into my soul. We were hiding in a deserted farmhouse, a safe house of sorts, miles from Cedarvale. The sky was stormy, thunder growling in the distance, and the flicker of lightning illuminated the dusty windows. Liora and I were alone. Tony and Marjorie had taken shifts elsewhere, guiding the other aliens to safer locations. She sat on a moth-eaten couch, arms wrapped around her knees, shivering as she fought another wave of the cycle. "Jake," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "I can't hold it back much longer." Her skin glowed in pulses, more intensely than ever before. A tangible pressure filled the air, prickling my senses. I knelt before her, heart aching with empathy. "I'm here," I said. "Tell me what to do." She gazed at me, despair and longing warring in her expression. "If we join, if we bond, it will set me free, but it binds us irrevocably. Your emotions, your essence, will be linked to mine. I don't know how that will affect you in the long run." Soft thunder shook the rafters. I took her hands, feeling them tremble. "I'm willing," I said. "I can't watch you suffer." My voice quivered with both fear and resolve. A tear slipped down her luminous cheek, and she leaned forward, pressing her forehead to mine. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the bare walls. In that hush between thunderclaps, our breathing synchronized. Then, gently, she opened her mind to me. I can't adequately describe what happened next. A rush of warmth, light, and pure emotion surged through my consciousness. I glimpsed flashes of Liora's world, towering crystalline spires, endless silver oceans, a sky awash with swirling auroras. I felt her heartbreak at leaving her home, her loneliness among humans, her terror at losing control. In turn, she felt my memories, childhood in Cedarvale, the heartbreaks I'd endured, my longing for connection. As the bond deepened, an ecstatic wave rippled between us. Reality blurred. My physical senses faded, replaced by a heady sense of unity. We merged in that silent farmhouse, bodies and spirits entangled in a cosmic dance. Each heartbeat pulsed with a harmony that transcended language. The storm raged outside, but within us, serenity blossomed. The swirling energies within Liora found their conduit, flowing into the bond, tempered by our shared emotions. After what felt like an eternity, we separated, gasping for breath. Her glow slowly receded to a soft, steady shimmer. The tension that had tormented her eyes was gone. She exhaled, leaning against my shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered, voice trembling with relief. "You saved me, and everyone around us." I cradled her in my arms, tears running down my cheeks. Part of me still reeled from the intimacy of the bond, the raw exposure of my soul. Yet I felt no regret, only awe, and a surging protectiveness unlike anything I'd known. In the days that followed, we discovered that our bond had forged something entirely new. We could sense each other's emotions from across a room, finishing each other's thoughts in a way that was both exhilarating and disconcerting. Liora, having stabilized her cycle, no longer emanated unpredictable waves of emotion. She remained luminous, but with a gentle radiance rather than a volatile glow. Our newly forged connection also drew scrutiny from the other aliens we'd freed. Some regarded me with curiosity, others with cautious acceptance, as if I were an honored guest in a realm I didn't fully comprehend. I tried to reassure them that I wanted to help, not exploit them. Meanwhile, word spread quietly that the facility had been compromised, that the aliens were gone. Government agents stepped up their patrols, scouring the countryside for any sign of them. Tensions soared in Cedarvale, with residents torn between suspicion and a desire to turn a blind eye. The daily news bristled with vague reports of incidents and fugitives. Tony heard rumors of a possible crackdown, even martial law if the aliens were discovered en masse. We needed a plan, something that would guarantee the safety of Liora's people, perhaps beyond Earth. Whispers of advanced alien technology teased our imaginations. Surely Liora's species could leave this planet if given the chance. But they lacked the means. The facility had stored their ship, or portions of it, in a heavily secured hangar somewhere. If we could retrieve it, they might repair it, freeing everyone. After much discussion, we settled on the idea. Break into the secured hangar, locate whatever remained of their interstellar craft, and hope it was salvageable. It was a wild scheme, but desperation fueled us. The aliens, for their part, vowed to do what they could to help. They possessed telepathic abilities, subtle, but enough to distract guards or slip through mental barriers. I'd witnessed faint traces of their psychic skill in Liora's uncanny empathy, though her people claimed it was far more potent when combined. Tony was skeptical, but in the end, we had no other options. The alternative was a lifetime on the run or recapture by the authorities. We decided to move quickly before the net tightened further. Night fell cold and clear as we approached the reinforced hangar, set behind layers of fences and watchtowers. This was a different location than the stasis facility, bigger, more heavily guarded. Armed patrols roamed the perimeter, floodlights cut swaths across the tarmac, and the hum of generators reverberated in the still air. Our group, comprised of several aliens and a handful of determined human allies, crouched behind a cluster of crates near the fence. The aliens formed a semicircle, linking hands, eyes closed. Liora explained that they would project a wave of mental misdirection, rendering us less noticeable to the guards. It wasn't invisibility, strictly speaking, but a subtle manipulation of perception. My heart thumped as we advanced in the open. The guards seemed to glance in our direction, but their gazes slid away blankly. My own mind felt slightly foggy, likely a side effect of the psychic field. Step by step, we crossed the open ground until we reached the hangar's side entrance. A guard stood nearby, but he stared right past us, as though we were part of the shadows. One of the aliens attempted to disengage the door's electronic lock. A small beep sounded, but we slipped inside before the guard could register anything amiss. My pulse hammered with excitement and terror. If the mental cloak failed, we'd be done for. Yet so far, fortune was with us. Inside, the massive hangar yawned like a cavern, illuminated by overhead lamps. In the center sat a partially disassembled craft, sleek lines of metal and crystalline components, scuffed and scorched. The sight of it took my breath away, its design both graceful and advanced beyond anything of earthly origin. Nearby, tables spilled over with tools, wires, and analysis equipment. As soon as the aliens saw it, a collective gasp rippled among them. Their eyes glowed with recognition. This was indeed their ship, or at least what remained of it. Moving swiftly, they spread out, checking components, running slender fingers along the battered hull. Liora joined them, a faint luminescence accenting her features. Then, from a far corner, a voice rang out. "Intruders! Stop where you are." Our luck had run out. A group of soldiers and lab technicians had appeared, drawn by the flicker of movement near the craft. The mental cloak faltered under the flood of adrenaline. Immediately, bright flashlights lanced through the dimness, pinning us. I heard the click of safeties being released on rifles. One of the aliens, eyes wide with fear, raised a trembling hand. A wave of psychic force rippled outward, causing some guards to stagger. But more reinforcements poured in from the opposite side. We were outnumbered, cornered inside the hangar, with nowhere to run. A voice barked through a megaphone. "Step away from the craft. You are in violation of multiple federal directives. Surrender immediately, or we will open fire." My mouth went dry. The aliens around me trembled with dread. Liora stared at me, her eyes flicking with desperate resolve. I sensed her thoughts. They couldn't return to captivity. They would die first. Just then, the overhead lights flickered. An unearthly hum filled the air, coming from the disassembled craft. One of the aliens at the control panel shouted something in their native tongue. A swirling glow enveloped the ship's broken pieces. Slowly, unbelievably, they began to realign, twisting in midair, snapping into place as though guided by invisible hands. A roar erupted from the soldiers. Gunfire cracked the air. Bullets ricocheted off the forming energy field around the ship. Sparks lit the darkness. Liora grabbed my hand, pulling me behind the craft's protective aura. My ears rang from the echoes of gunshots, my heart racing. The aliens channeled their combined power, bridging technology and psionics to reassemble their vessel. But time was scarce. The soldiers advanced, taking cover behind crates, continuing to fire. I braced myself, expecting any second to be cut down by stray bullets. Yet the shimmering barrier around the ship absorbed the rounds. At the edges, it flickered, threatening to collapse. If that happened, we'd be sitting ducks. Liora, face contorted with concentration, poured her energy into the field, feeding it. My bond with her hummed painfully, as though I were lending her my strength. In a dazzling burst, the ship lifted slightly off the floor, its engines whining in protest. Panels slid into place, sealed by arcs of blue light. A hatch opened along the side, beckoning us. The aliens rushed forward, ushering me along, ignoring the hail of gunfire. I stumbled, half supported by Liora, stepping into the craft. Inside, the design was clean and sparse. Controls glowed at a central console. The hatch hissed closed behind us, sealing out the gunfire. With a high-pitched whir, the engines powered up. Energy surged through the vessel, and it began to rise, ignoring the hangar's roof as if intangible. My eyes widened in astonishment, and an almost sickening jolt forced me to grab onto a railing. We phased upwards, passing through the structure like a ghost, or so it seemed. For a moment, the walls shimmered around us. Then, we were free, soaring into the night sky. Looking through a viewing port, I saw the base shrinking beneath us, searchlights stabbing the darkness in vain. Cheers erupted among the aliens, though some stared with haunted expressions, as though uncertain what might happen next. Liora clung to me, breathing heavily, her glow flickering with exhaustion. She murmured in her language, a phrase I couldn't understand but felt through our bond: gratitude, relief, love. Once at a safe altitude, the ship hovered, engines thrumming. The aliens conferred among themselves, deciding their next course. Some wanted to leave Earth immediately, to find a star corridor and return home. Others worried about those left behind, or about forging an understanding with humanity. In the end, it was agreed that the best chance for survival lay in departing Earth for now, at least until the threat of recapture was gone. They would regroup among the stars, possibly seeking alliances with other factions sympathetic to interspecies cohabitation. My heart pounded. If they left, that meant Liora would be leaving, too. The thought of parting from her tore at me, yet I sensed her resolve, her desire to rejoin her people. She belonged among them, or so I believed. "What about you?" she asked softly, turning those luminous eyes to me. "Will you stay on Earth or come with me?" The question rattled me to my core. My entire life, my roots, were in Cedarvale, but so was the constant threat that we'd never be left in peace. And deeper still was my bond with Liora, an unbreakable link forged in the fires of crisis and love. Could I bear to lose that? I glanced down at her hand in mine. "I'll go wherever you go," I murmured. A tear traced her cheek, but the joy in her eyes was unmistakable. She squeezed my hand, understanding the sacrifice and choice I was making. Then, with the approval of her companions, we braced ourselves as the ship ascended higher. The view outside showed the curvature of the Earth, dawn streaking the horizon. My heart thundered with mingled fear and exhilaration. The journey beyond Earth's atmosphere was unlike anything I could have imagined. The vessel shook as it broke free from gravity. Then everything went quiet and still. In the window, the planet glowed in soft blues and greens, gradually receding. A hush descended, broken only by the occasional beep of alien instruments. Liora guided me to a seat, her hand never leaving mine. Her people began plotting a course through the star lanes. The technology, half intuitive, half coded, responded to their mental inputs as much as to the physical console. I felt wave after wave of awe. We were truly leaving Earth behind. Yet, bizarrely, I felt no panic. My link with Liora reassured me that we were together in this leap of faith. Through the panoramic window, the infinite canvas of stars stretched across the void. I glanced over at Liora, seeing her reflective gaze. She was radiant, not in the frenzied glow of the mating cycle, but in calm contentment. "What about Cedarvale, about your home?" she asked gently, brushing her fingers along my arm. "Aren't you worried you'll miss it?" I swallowed a lump in my throat, memories flashing of the quiet street, the porch swing, the smell of morning coffee. I will miss it, I admitted. But maybe one day, when things calm down, I can go back. Or maybe I'll find a new home among the stars. It's scary, but also thrilling. She nodded, voice soft. Your courage humbles me, Jake. I let out a small laugh, still shaking my head in amazement. If someone had told me a few weeks ago that my mail carrier would be an alien, and that I'd leave Earth alongside her, I'd have called them crazy. Her lips curved into a gentle smile. Sometimes the universe offers us possibilities beyond our comprehension. As the ship set its course for distant realms, I joined Liora by the viewing port. We watched Earth gradually shrink until it was a shining marble in the darkness. A wave of bittersweet emotion stirred inside me. So many memories, so much left behind. Yet, I didn't feel regret. I felt the future unfolding in front of us, vast and infinite. Holding my hand tightly, Liora spoke, voice trembling with gratitude. We stand on the threshold of new horizons, Jake Carter. Our bond. It's a symbol that our worlds can meet and merge, despite all odds. I glanced at her glowing skin, at the silver hair that had first caught my attention on that unremarkable morning. It's more than a symbol, I whispered. It's our life now. She leaned her head against my shoulder, exhaling softly. Outside, the stars shimmered in silent welcome. In that vast emptiness, love found its place, bridging galaxies. Around us, her people tended to the ship, exchanging hushed words of relief and anticipation. Though the road ahead was uncertain, an undeniable sense of hope pervaded. For a time, we simply stood together, hearts thrumming in tandem, the bond between us pulsing with quiet strength. I understood that our story was just beginning, that 1,000 challenges might await us among the stars. Yet I also knew we'd face them side by side, united by a force that transcended the boundaries of biology and space. Closing my eyes, I remembered the morning she first introduced herself, the subtle brush of our fingers, the spark that had ignited a chain of events neither of us could have foreseen. And I felt an indescribable gratitude that, in the end, everything had brought us here, to this improbable moment, safe and free. It wasn't the ending I'd ever expected, but perhaps that's the nature of life's grandest adventures. Sometimes, a new day dawns with revelations that shift our entire reality, pushing us to shed the familiar and embrace the unknown. My life had certainly been turned upside down, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. As long as Liora was at my side, I was ready to soar. Outside the window, the bright swirl of cosmic lights beckoned. The ship's engines hummed, propelling us toward a distant star. My heart brimmed with wonder. And through the soft hush of the cabin, my hand gently entwined in Liora's, I heard the quiet, steady promise that, no matter what lay ahead, we would find our way, together. Happy ending. In the end, we did find safety among the stars, beyond the reach of fearful governments and clandestine experiments. Over time, Liora's people healed from their ordeal, rebuilding their strength. I learned their ways, their language, and became more at home in their midst than I ever was on Earth. Our bond, forged in crisis, flourished into a deep, abiding love. Sometimes, when the universal tides permitted, we'd send discreet messages back to Cedarvale, letting Tony and Marjorie know we were alive and well. And one day, when interstellar relations took a more hopeful turn, we returned for a brief visit, no longer fugitives, but ambassadors of a brighter possibility. The streets of Cedarvale were much the same, but the people's hearts had opened just a crack wider to the wonders beyond the sky. Indeed, my alien mail carrier's mating season had turned my life upside down. Yet, from that upheaval blossomed a story of redemption, love, and boundless horizons. In some ways, it was the happiest ending I could imagine, one filled with starlight, unity, and the promise that, in this vast cosmos, the threads of fate often weave together in glorious, unexpected ways.